Well, happy Earth Day. There's nowhere more important for all of us to be than right here. The issues that have been facing residents in this area for decades are issues of frustration, despair, disappointment, certainly motivation as well. To take a crisis that has lingered for too long and finally bring it to a long overdue resolution. This visit for EPA is very important for us to make sure that we aren't just seeing and hearing firsthand on the ground in Southern California, but ensuring that the path forward is one of max collaboration and extreme urgency to end a crisis that should have ended a long time ago. It's a beautiful day where people should be able to spend an Earth Day not worrying about foul smells in the air, Tijuana Valley degradation, public health, beach closures, and so much more. But that's the reality that Americans in Southern California have had to live through for way too long. And they want action, and they're right. Their voice is certainly being heard loud and clear today with all of you being here to tell their story. And we thank all of those members of the media who are here to tell that story of these Southern California families who have dealt with this for too long. So last night I had a meeting at the consulate in San Diego. It was led by the Mexican Environmental Secretary. The Consul General was there. The Mexican Commissioner to the IWBC was present, and other members of the Mexican delegation. The meeting lasted a little over 90 minutes. Started with a presentation by Mexico of their understanding of all of their work, providing updates on what they believe they need to do to help resolve this issue. It was clear in the way that the Mexican Environmental Secretary approached every aspect of this meeting yesterday. It was clear with the way that the Mexican Environmental Secretary approached the conversation yesterday evening that she wants to have a strong collaborative relationship, and she would often speak on behalf of the Mexican president about how the new Mexican president wants to have a close collaboration with the United States and the US president to finally resolve this issue. And I welcome that collaboration. Now, to that end, the Chief of Staff of EPA and the President's nominee to head up the Office of Land and Emergency Management will be speaking with the Chief of Staff to the Mexican Environmental Secretary to ensure that over the course of the coming days, over the course of the next couple weeks, that we are able to put together a specific statement from both countries on a mutual understanding of what Mexico is going to do to help resolve this issue. See, one of the big frustrations that we all have is that when a statement like this comes out, that statement ends up being very short and very vague, and it doesn't really tell the public much of anything. We want to ensure that this statement is informing the public on specifics so that they don't have to take anyone else's word for it. They can read it directly with the Mexican government signing off on the statement. The IWBC Mexican Commissioner and US Commissioner agreed to quickly have a meeting at IWBC to get to the bottom of a lot of items that we here on the American side have questions and we need answers. The Mexican Environmental Secretary and I are going to be instantly calling for a board meeting of NavBank to talk through projects on the Mexican side and the US side and to talk timeline. So we just had a very good roundtable discussion with the people who are in front of you. And as we're going around this room, we're hearing a lot of good, insightful ideas after decades of experience, trying to figure out every way to possibly resolve this. What is so important is that over the course of the next 24 hours, that we develop one comprehensive list of everything that we believe with full confidence is going to end the crisis. We don't want the 70% solution or the 90% solution, but we all need to be on the same page on the 100% solution from the US side. That if all of these things on that list get done, this crisis is over. With regards to projects that are listed, if anyone wants to ask about a timetable to get anything done and what our goal is, the answer has to be to get every project done as fast as humanly possible. That if any of you, and I mentioned this in the roundtable that we just came from, if any of you put on the hat of EPA administrator that there is no physical way for you to be able to get this done any faster than we're getting this done. This is what we owe the people of Southern California, who are desperate to be able to put this in their rearview mirror. So we're going to stress test every single project and every timeline. We did it yesterday during the meeting, where one particular project, as it relates to diverting 10 million gallons per day of water from the Tijuana River Valley, sewage from the Tijuana River Valley to the dam, will help relieve stress. And they were saying it was going to take until the middle or end of 2027. And we started talking through it. It was a very good collaborative discussion where at the end of the back and forth, the Mexican officials were saying that they believe that we would be able to take off a year of that timeline. And that was just a few minutes of talking through creative solutions of being able to work through a process. We need to do that with every project. Now, additionally, we spoke about, I brought up chemical remediation with regards to effluents at the San Antonio de los Buenos site to make sure that they are eliminating bacteria. I brought up the idea of constructing a large outflow away from the shore into the ocean, a longer outflow. We spoke about sending EPA employees instantly down to the San Antonio de los Buenos site to allow us in the United States to confirm operations. The number of topics discussed were extensive, but as we're talking about this overall solution, we were also emphasizing the need that Mexico factors in population growth in Tijuana to ensure that if we get to the end of that current list, that 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we're not back sitting at a table again because, oh, we forgot to anticipate the factor of population growth and we're right back to where we are today because we didn't plan ahead for the future. Population growth absolutely needs to be part of that conversation and solution. This is not a partisan press conference. This isn't a partisan day. You see members of both parties who are here coming together because they're greatly concerned about their neighbors. Today's tour started at South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant. We had multiple stops throughout the site, and it was actually very helpful in identifying a couple of other projects that are needed that aren't on the current list of Mexican side projects. Because, as was pointed out, if you do everything that's currently on the list, but you still have the flow into Tijuana River, well, the beaches are still going to remain closed. So obviously there aren't enough Mexican side projects if the sewage is still going to get put into Tijuana River. Good point. Another part of the tour, we stop at a U.S. side location near the plant, and it's pointed out that sediment at that location on the Mexican side needs to be prevented from getting across the border. It's very insightful. Well, that's not currently on the list, so it needs to get added. And O&M, the operation and maintenance of these sites, long term, is going to have to be a commitment made by Mexico to ensure that this capital investment doesn't result in infrastructure that soon falls into disrepair, because on the Mexican side they aren't dealing with it. Now, The patience that I sense of this group is about 2.5 seconds. I think that's their compromise. 2.5 seconds of patience. And I know that our counterparts in Mexico are watching today's press conference. And by the way, to all of you who are here, right now, while we are here, Mexico, I was told, was going to be speaking publicly at the San Antonio de los Buenos plant. And I look forward to watching their comments, because the path forward is going to be critical. What happens after today? You must be standing there, say, okay, this is good. All these people are here, we're having this conversation. But what happens after today? And with that 1.5 patience that all these elected officials have, with that 2.5 patience that all the elected officials here have and all of you have, it's going to be important that one, Mexico documents everything that they are willing to accept and follow through on that's on our list or not, so that we know whether or not Mexico is committed to the full list that we know will fully solve this issue. Now, they still need to obligate $88 million remaining from their commitment from the 2022. Mexico still needs to obligate $88 million that remains of that agreement that was reached in July of 2022. And it's important for them to obligate that at this time. Now, I just want to share that Mexico discussed 3 infrastructure projects that they said were completed. San Antonio de los Buenos wastewater treatment facility, the IBWC pumping plant, and Los Lores 1 Orient collector. There are a number of projects that are not yet completed with various timelines that were discussed. New international collector, floodgates on the Tijuana River, rehabilitation of pumping plant 1, diversion of effluents from the Arturo Herrera and La Merida wastewater treatment plants, rehabilitation of the Metadora and Laureles 2 pumping stations, and backup power supply for pumping station 1. And just to make sure that we are not missing anything, let me take a quick look at the list. I think we got to everything. Lastly, the degradation of Tijuana River is something that people want dealt with right now. Now, if you don't do all of the other projects, and all you do is clean up the current contamination, that feel-good moment will last about a day. We have to stop the flow in. Mexico needs to fulfill its part in cleaning up the contamination that they caused, their people caused. They cannot view this as a U.S. problem just because their contamination reached U.S. soil. We need Mexico to not just commit to all the projects that will stop the flow, but in order to actually finish this project, they're going to need to commit to that final cleanup. So it's a long list, but you all didn't come here for just a few talking points and some general thought. You want specifics, and we're happy to do it. And before we are able to answer questions, I am grateful. We are pleased to be joined by a few members of Congress. First, I would like to introduce Congressman Darrell Issa. I've served with these members of Congress in the House, and I look forward to partnering with this congressional delegation to get this over the finish line. We want to make sure that when we all gather again, if it's Earth Day 1 year from now, we are celebrating much progress, much victory, and little to zero setback in getting this finally put in the rearview mirror. I invite Congressman Issa to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Administrator. It is Earth Day, but it's also a new day. In just 100 days, President Trump made a commitment, not just to the American people, but with the Mexican people, to make sure that this problem gets solved. And when I say the problem gets solved, I didn't say that we sign a letter of understanding. I didn't say we appropriate money again, having appropriated over $600 million to this project so far. But in fact, we get to results. What you heard from the administrator is we are no longer judging this project based on just a list of things to do or just how much money has been appropriated. We're judging it based on results. And results will be what we get measured by. At Miramar, at least we can say it's a sound of freedom. You also heard from the administrator, and I know you've heard from President Trump on multiple occasions, this is in fact Mexico's garbage being thrown over our fence. This is Mexico's sewage coming into our waters. And in fact, we are willing to. The president has shown a commitment, both in the last administration he ran and this one, to work with Mexico, to provide much of the funding and the technical support. But we must have the cooperation, and he is insisting on the cooperation of Mexico. Lastly, what you heard from the administrator, I want you all to make sure you report, and that is inspection in Mexico by American officials or those designated by America. This is not a new idea. I represent Fallbrook, California, among other parts, including the Mexican border. Today, the USDA is in Mexico inspecting fruit and groves to make sure we don't get infestation coming over the border. We have a history of working across border that includes measuring, complying, making sure that what is promised to be done is done. And that is what is going to be different on this new day, is what is being promised yesterday by this binational meeting, and every day is the promises made have to be the promises kept, and promises are only kept if they're measured. All of that is what you heard today that is different than the last 10, 20, 30, or even 40 years. We will measure results, not just the input of money. Thank you. And I think next,
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Levin. I represent North County. Now you might wonder, there's our plane. All right, I'll try that again. I'm Mike Levin. I represent North County. You might wonder why somebody who represents North County cares about as much as I do about this issue for the last 7 years, and it's very personal to me and to our family. My wife's nephew trained in Coronado as a Navy SEAL, and in his 20s wound up getting cancer. We don't definitively know whether that cancer was caused by his service. We know that he's gotten a lot better. We know that he's gotten a lot better, but like so many Marines and others, our Border Patrol and members of the community, they're impacted by toxic sewage in the water. We're impacted in the air. We know it goes all the way up to North County. I want to thank Administrator Zeldin for joining us this morning. We had a very constructive visit, a very constructive conversation, and Lee had a reputation in the Congress, I hope I don't get you in trouble saying this, working in a bipartisan way, and did a lot of good in the United States Congress, and I know he's going to do a lot of good for this issue because he's focused on results, he's focused on accountability, and he's focused on speeding up the timeline. And it's so critically important. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, what Darrell said is correct. $653 million has been appropriated in federal funds for the South Bay plant. That was $300 million back in 2020 when they told us that was what they needed to get the job done. then another 103 million in 2023, another 250 million at the end of last year. That's a lot of money. We got to make sure we get shovels in the ground. I don't want to see more design studies and delays and kicking the can down the road. Get the shovels in the ground. The second thing is we've got to hold Mexico to account. That's been said by many folks here for the untreated sewage that is flowing right now. We just had an opportunity to see it in the Tijuana River, and we are appreciative of the renewed commitment around the San Antonio de los Buenos plant, but we've got to get that other $88 million deployed. I will just tell you one last thing, which is the importance of O&M. And I spoke with some of you the other day. Back in the 90s, and Juan Vargas knows this better than I because you've been working on this for 30 years, when the federal government spent $250 million all the way back in the 90s for the South Bay plant initially, they missed the operations and maintenance piece of the equation. So year after year after year, that plant fell into a state of complete disrepair, which is why it's going to cost what it will cost to repair it now. So we've got to do both. It's not an either or. We've got to fix the South Bay wastewater treatment plant. We've got to do everything we can to hold Mexico to account and work with them on that untreated sewage in the Tijuana River. And then hopefully we will have a safer, cleaner environment for generations to come. Thank you.
Sorry. Sorry. Gotcha. Sorry about that.
Okay, Ron, now the long story.
That's a long story. No, I'm not going to give the long story. First of all, I want to thank the administrator for being here. Lee Zeldin and I have known each other for a while. He actually grew up a few miles from my wife on Long Island. In Congress, he was known as a guy that could really get things done. And he really did get things done. In fact, as a Democrat, we were a little afraid he was going to win New York, which is impossible for a Republican to win. He almost did. And because he has such a good reputation, he works very hard. He's a very capable person. And that's why we're very thankful that you're here. And we have a lot of hope at the moment that things will get done. And again, Godspeed to you. We do hope that everything that you're doing has, at the end of the day, fruition and gets done. Mexico has to be a part of it, as you know. I think you said it well. And so again, I want to thank the administrator. I think he, again, comes in with a heart to do this, and he wants to get it fixed, and I thank him. I also thank the president. I think the president also, even though we're from a different party, I think he also wants to get this done. And this is not an issue between Republicans or Democrats. This is an American issue. And let's get it done for everybody. So again, I want to thank the administrator and thank everybody here.
Thanks.
Thanks, we appreciate it.
When I was with the president in the Oval Office having a meeting about a pipeline for natural gas in Northeast U.S., he was talking multiple times in the meeting about solving this situation on the southern border, and it was not a natural tie. We kept trying to go back to other topics, but this was top of mind for him. This has been top of mind for him. Two of his very close friends who are here, who are not just friends, but the chair and the vice chair of his Environment Advisory Task Force, Ed Russo and Rob Barrett, are here. So thank you to Ed and Rob. They are often speaking to the president about environmental issues, so it was important for us that they were here as well. So with that being said, to sum it all up, you know what we did from last night's meeting to this morning's tour to the roundtable we just have. In the press conference here, we're going to go take a helicopter tour, and then we're going to meet with Navy SEALs, both leadership as well as those who are SEALs in training. And then we look forward to, in the hours to follow, not years, in the hours to follow, we're going to finalize a complete list. We're almost there. I would say my takeaway from today's roundtable is the list might be about 95% of the way there, but I want everyone's feedback. We want to have a list that we are all with full confidence that if everything on that list gets done, the situation is solved, and that we're going to get, Mexico is either going to agree to it or they're not, and then we're going to know whether or not Mexico is going to do its part to resolve it, and then we'll go from there as far as strategy and tactics. With that being said, we're happy to answer any questions.
Zeldin, what was your first reaction to the smell down there? What was your gut reaction to the smell?
I can't imagine living with it. My first thought was post 9/11, New York, EPA came in and said that the air was safe to breathe. And I can't tell you how many funerals I've been to of people who relied on that advice and ended up working the pile, and they had horrible ends of their lives. It was not sudden. It was very drawn out, and they suffered with tremendous pain. I am not going to stand before you right now and sugarcoat that smell and tell you that the situation as it relates to public health and the environment, which is the core mission of EPA, that this is a situation that can be tolerated. This is a situation that must be eliminated. And that smell is a reminder of what happened post 9/11 and my responsibility as EPA administrator to ensure that I'm being honest with the public. Yeah. What do you, and then we'll go next.
My question is, you mentioned this list and that you hope Mexico agrees, but what if Mexico does not agree? How will you hold them accountable? Because this has been happening for decades.
So what they represented at last night's meeting is that on behalf of the President of Mexico, the new President of Mexico, that they are fully committed to doing their part to resolving this issue. Now, if we were to draw up one list, if we came up with one option, if we said that there was only one way, and that one way included our full standards of what sewage infrastructure should look like inside of an American city, it's possible that right there on the first topic, at the top of the list, there ends up being a funding issue that Mexico might be articulating. Here's the bottom line from Americans on this side of the border. There's no kids here. And I'm a New Yorker, and if I say this in a way that offends people from Southern California, I'm sorry. But I know that our counterparts in Mexico are listening, and I say this with all due respect. But to understand what's going on inside of the American, who just cares about having it resolved, they don't give a shit how it gets done, as long as this crisis is over. With all due respect.
Excuse me, could you say what station you're from or what organization, please? Thank you.
So, what kind of funding is going to be needed on a yearly basis for maintenance? Will that be taken into, will it be thought about?
Everything. We want everything part of the plan right now. We don't want any surprises, and we don't want to act naive and shocked when a few years from now we figure out that, oh, we didn't see that coming in 2025. We know that there's population growth in Tijuana. A plan is going to have a cost. Part of that cost is on the American side. A large part of that cost, Congress has already appropriated with the members of Congress leading that charge who are standing before you. O&M is something that came up frequently during our tour this morning, is making sure that O&M is there on both the American side and on the Mexican side. It is critical that that solution that's being put forth includes operations and maintenance, not just investing in the capital to build it, but making sure the funds are there to maintain it.
And two things you need to be aware of. Chad, if you raise your hand, well, when that passes. First of all, the President appointed a new head of the commission on our side, and Chad's with us today. It was on the tour to make sure we have a level of transparency on O&M. The second part, which I think the administrator is in the process of making sure is agreed from Mexico, much of the operation and maintenance excess cost comes from the debris, the silt, the rocks, other activities that are coming into the water that destroy pumps prematurely. So there's both a prevention of excess O&M and a disclosure by the new head of our commission.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk
And if
about
and just I want to say, if and I can just add one other point, just so that we don't create like some type of international incident in what we are communicating. If there's another option that deals with sewage from Tijuana, all we care about on our side is that it does not reach our side. We just care that it does not cause Tijuana Valley degradation. We care that there are no more beach closures. We care that there's no more foul smells. We care that there's no more harm to public health. What we're saying is, if option A is not available to you for whatever reason, we don't care as long as you find an option B or an option C that makes this crisis go away.
Can you elaborate on your statement yesterday that environmental organizations shouldn't lose their taxes exempt status, and does the administration plan to issue an executive order around this issue?
Any type of organization that has any type of tax exempt status, and whether we're talking C3s, C4s, C6s, they all just need to follow the laws as are currently on the books that apply to their status. I happen to be an attorney for a little over 20 years, and if any of them came to me for advice, that would be my advice. Now, there are always organizations of all types that end up straying from the laws. All I have to say, as administrator of EPA, I'm not coming before you as the IRS commissioner. I'm not coming before you as a member of Congress who sets these laws, or the Secretary of Treasury as the EPA administrator. All I could say is that if you follow the laws that are on the books, the rest will work itself out.
Administrator, I was curious to know the updated timeline for completion, whether or not Mexico is willing to help. Has that changed since the roundtable meeting?
So yeah, as far as some of the projects we were able to talk through on the spot, individual project, there was one project where they said it wasn't going to get done until the middle or end of 2027. And as we're talking through mechanics of the timeline and which order things get done and which reviews can get done concurrently, they were agreeing by the end of that back and forth that they believe that they could get a year off of that timeline for that project that is directly related to diverting 10 million gallons of raw sewage from the Tijuana River. So what we need to do at the IWBC level, starting instantly, at the NABBank level, starting instantly, directly between both countries at the principal level, instantly, is making sure that we are pressure testing each individual project in every timeline to make sure that everything is done as quickly as it possibly can get done. But the one thing is clear after last night's meeting is that we need to do a whole lot more of that. That was a good 90+ minute conversation, but we need to do that on every single project to get the timeline down as much as possible. I want to be able to stand before you. I would want anyone to be able to stand before you and go through all the projects and say with full confidence that there is absolutely no way that any project on that list could possibly get done any sooner. That is one of my goals.
Should California declare a state of emergency? Would that help anything up?
You have representatives here from the local government, from the state government, from the federal government. What I heard at today's roundtable included representatives from the state government looking for finding ways for the state government to be able to get more active. Listen, we just want to help. I can only speak for the federal government. All we want to do is work with these other levels of government to be able to work with the local people, to be able to work with the IWBC, work with Mexican peers, and be able to get this situation fully resolved. California has not declared a state of emergency. If California is requesting a disaster declaration, then the federal government will consider the state's disaster declaration. But there is no request that is in front of us. I would defer to the representatives who are here, especially those at the state level, to work at the state level in deciding what they believe is best for the state. I'll say at the federal level is that we want to help. We want to help. And there's argument to be made that it should have been done by now. I've heard it over the course of today's different events from multiple people. They feel like this request should have gone in, should have been granted, and your question should have already been in the rearview mirror. And it's something that's been presented to me from a few different people with quite a bit of passion and conviction as well. Yes.
Yes.
I'll get you next.
Positivity and a good spirit of collaboration. How confident are you that this kind of a collaboration is going to continue? And are you going to increase in the funding? Yeah. Thank you.
We have.
Oh, and also one more thing is a tariff consideration.
We have almost no patience, and it's not out of being stubborn or lacking the right trait. It's because the Americans on our side of the border, who have been dealing with this for decades, are out of patience. There's no way that we are going to stand before the people of California and ask them to have more patience and just bear with all of us as we go through the next 10 or 20 or 30 years of being stuck in 12 feet of raw sewage and not getting anywhere. So we are all out of patience. There's a very limited opportunity where, in good faith, both on the American side and also on the Mexican side, what's being communicated by the new Mexican president is an intense desire to fully resolve this situation. And I love that that passion that it was advocated with last night. It's clear that the Mexican president and the U.S. president have gotten along in their conversations so far. So we hope that with the second half of patience, they can get it done. Yes. So first off, I don't lobby Congress. I come from Congress, as was pointed out.
You're welcome on the House floor.
That's true. I've worked with these members of the House on both sides of the aisle, and I want to continue working with them as they fight for their constituents. But I'm gonna turn the mic over to them to answer as far as where Congress would go as it relates to the congressional part of your question.
Well, you know, you're hearing local action saying there has to be something, and I think for Congressman Levin and myself, it's particularly. Hold on a second. Congressman Levin earlier today said, paraphrasing, that he wasn't willing to appropriate new money for construction if, in fact, he didn't see the cooperation from Mexico. That good money after bad would be a mistake. We'll pay for operation and maintenance and so on. The point of that bipartisan statement, because I couldn't agree with him more, is that we're at a point where we're demanding solutions. And I'll just give you one example that everyone here can go down and take pictures of. You can't necessarily get every bacteria out of the water, and we understand this is a complex problem. It's why the president has his representatives here with possible solutions. But you can spot a large truck tire before it gets down from Mexico into the United States. We have to judge our partners in Mexico of a treaty, an international treaty that was made back in the 40s, based on whether they're making a good faith effort in construction and in the work that they can do. And we're going to do that on behalf of all the cities here.
So what Congressman Issa said about no more excuses, no more delays, and no new appropriations for construction until we see shovels in the ground and we see progress being made is absolutely right. We are on the same page. This is truly a bipartisan issue, and we've got to hold to account all involved. I know the new commissioner. I told him I spent a fair amount of time picking on the former commissioner. I'll spend a fair amount of time picking on him. We got to get those shovels in the ground. We got to get the South Bay plant. There he is back there. We got to get the South Bay plant up and running, doubled in capacity as quickly as possible. And just the same, we've got to make sure that Mexico actually spends that other $88 million and that we have a plan for the untreated sewage. I think one other thing we should look at is whether Mexico is fully in compliance with the environmental requirements of the USMCA that was signed in 2020, because what we all saw this morning with tires and everything else flowing through the Tijuana River is unacceptable, and we cannot allow that to continue.
Thanks for that question.
Anything else?
One last one on the bipartisan effort.
Well, the only thing I would add, thank you again. Yep. The only thing I would add is this, and I think the administrator is right about this, that previous presidents in Mexico really didn't care. Just to be honest with you, they didn't care. AMLO, the former president, he did. He was the first person that actually spent any money at all, and that was to rehabilitate their plant in San Antonio Los Buenos. That was not as loud. Figure that one out. The new president of Mexico, and I have had the opportunity now to meet with her, she's an environmental scientist. That's what her career was. And she has committed to doing this, and I hope she does follow through with what she said. But again, I think we should thank the previous Mexican president. He was the only one that actually spent any money at all. Not all the money he should have. There's still that money missing. But he was the first one that spent anything at all. The previous presidents didn't care. The last one did a little bit. Hopefully this one does a lot more.
Okay. And what was the last part of your question?
I was just going to ask if mayors Todd Gloria and Paloma here from Imperial Beach were invited as well.
Yeah, at the tour this morning, between this morning's tour and then the roundtable that we just had, we had some participants at the tour this morning at the treatment plant, some participants at the roundtable. Between the tour and the roundtable, everybody participated.
Mitch McKay is representing Imperial Beach because he was the author of the bill adopted by the 4 members of the council.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.